When the Empress found herself awakened by such an evil noise, which was worse than a trance, she lay motionless, unable to utter a word. Hippolytus did not understand the maiden's words, but he did understand her tone of voice, and so that no one would recognize him, he put his head under the blanket. When he saw what great anguish his lady was in, he put his arm around her and made her duck under the blanket, asking her why she was so frightened. "Oh, my son," said the Empress, "get up! The Emperor is at the door, and your life and mine are in God's hands at this very moment. And if I cannot speak to you, or you to me, forgive me with all your heart as I do, because I now see that this day has been the beginning and the end of all happiness and delight, and the final hour of your life and mine." When Hippolytus heard the Empress saying these words, he began to feel very sorry for himself, because he had never been in a situation like this before. Young as he was, he joined the Empress, serving her up tears instead of advice and aid. But he begged the maiden to bring him the sword that was in the sitting room, and plucking up his courage, he said, "Here I shall become a martyr before your Majesty, and deliver my spirit." And at that instant the Empress heard no noise whatsoever, and she said to Hippolytus, "Go hide in that sitting room, my son. I will delay them, and you can escape with your life. I wouldn't abandon your Majesty even if they gave me the whole Greek Empire 4 times over. I will give my life and everything I have before I leave your Highness, and I beg you to kiss me as a token of faith," said Hippolytus. When the Empress heard these words, her pain increased, and with the increase of pain she felt her love increasing. As she heard no noise at all, she went to the chamber door to see if she could hear soldiers or some other bad sign. Through a small crack in the door she saw the Emperor and the doctors discussing her illness, and she realized that there was no danger. She ran back to Hippolytus, and pulling his ear, she kissed him hard. Then she said, "My son, by the greatest love I have for you, I beg you to go into that sitting room until I can make up an excuse for the Emperor and the doctors." "My lady," said Hippolytus, "in all things I will be more obedient to you than if I had been brought as a captive. But don't ask me to leave here, because I don't know if they will harm you." "Don't worry," said the Empress. "It is not what Lucio told me at all. There would be a great uproar in the palace if it were." Hippolytus quickly went into the sitting room, and the Empress got back into her bed and had the doors to the chamber opened. The Emperor and the doctors went to her bed and asked about her illness and how she had spent the night. The Empress answered that her headache and the pain in her stomach had not let her sleep all night long, and that she had not been able to rest until the stars in the sky had disappeared. "Then, since I could no longer stay awake, I slept, and now I feel much happier than before, and I believe that if that pleasant dream had lasted longer, I would feel even better. But in this world a person cannot be completely happy. With the painful awakening this maiden has given me, my spirit is in more anguish than I can say. If I could go back the way I was, it would be great consolation to me. I could touch and hold in my arms the things that I loved and have loved most in this world." The Emperor said, "Tell me, my lady, what was it that you held in your arms?" The Empress answered, "My lord, the greatest blessing I have ever had in the world. I fell asleep, and soon it seemed to me that I was up on the roof in my chemise, saying the prayer that I always pray to the 3 kings of the Orient. And when I had finished the blessed prayer, I heard a voice telling me, 'Do not go, for in this place you will possess the grace you are asking for.' And soon I saw my beloved son coming towards me, accompanied by many gentlemen, all dressed in white, and they held Hippolytus by the hand. Surrounding me, the 2 of them caught up my hands, and soon it seemed to me that it was up on the roof in my chemise that um, I saw my beloved son coming towards me, accompanied by many gentlemen, all dressed in white, and they held Hippolytus by the hand. Surrounding me, the 2 of them caught up my hands and kissed them, and they wanted to kiss my feet. But I would not let them. As we sat on the roof, we exchanged many words which gave me great delight, and they were so many and so delicious that they always remain in my heart. They will always remain in my heart. Afterwards we entered the chamber, and I held him by the hand. My son and I got into bed, and I put my right arm around his shoulders, and his mouth kissed my breasts. I have never had such a pleasant sleep. And my son said to me, My lady, since you cannot have me in this miserable world, take my brother Hippolytus as your son, for I love him as much as I love Carmenisa. And when he said that these words, he was lying beside me, and Hippolytus was obediently kneeling in the middle of the chamber. I asked him where his room was, and he told me that he was among the martyred knights in paradise, because he had died in battle against the infidel. And I could not ask him more, because Alucia woke me up with such a sound more strident than a trumpet. Didn't I say, said the emperor, that all her talk was only about her son? Oh, my lord, said the empress, it hurt no one more than me. I held him in this arm. His pleasant mouth was touching my breasts, and the dreams you have in the morning often come true. I think he still may not have left. I would like to try and go back to sleep to see if he will talk to me again. I beg you, said the emperor, put this madness out of your head, and get up out of bed. I beg you, my lord, said the empress, for my health and pleasure, let me rest a little. My eyes are clouded from lack of sleep. My lord, said the doctors, it would be better if your majesty would leave and we let her sleep, because if we take this pleasure from her, it would not be surprising if her illness got much worse. The emperor left, and so did all the maidens in the chamber except Lucia. When the doors were closed and the empress had Hippolytus come back in, she said to the maiden, Since fortune has permitted you to know about this matter, I command you to serve Hippolytus, even more than myself, with all your heart. Stay in that sitting room until we have slept a little. I shall favor you more highly than all the others, and I will marry you to a man of higher station than the others. After Hippolytus will give you so many of his possessions that you will be very satisfied. Heaven help me, said Lucia. But I have no desire to serve Hippolytus, and even less to love and honor him, but since your majesty commands me, I'll do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't stoop to the floor to pick up a needle for him. I tell you, since the time I saw him lying next to your majesty, I've never felt more ill will for any man in the world than I feel for him. I would like to see a lion eat up his eyes, his face, and all the rest of him. Hippolytus answered, Maiden, I never meant to make you angry. I want to love you and do more for you than all the other maidens in the world. Do it for the others, said Lucia, but don't bother me. I don't want anything that belongs to you. And she quickly went into the sitting room and began to cry. The two lovers stayed in bed so long that it was nearly time for vespers when they got up, and they found the maiden still crying. When she saw them coming into the sitting room, she stopped her wailing, and the empress consoled her and begged her not to say anything about what Hippolytus had done. My lady, said the maiden, your majesty needn't worry about me. I would die before I would tell anybody anything without your command. As for the second thing, have no fear. I will serve Hippolytus in every way I can, out of consideration for your majesty. The empress was satisfied, and she left Hippolytus in the sitting room and went back to her bed. Then she commanded the chamber doors to be opened. Soon her daughter was there, among with all the other maidens, the emperor and the doctors. Again she told them about her pleasant dream. The meal was served, and the empress ate like someone who had tired from walking a long distance. The maiden was diligent in serving Hippolytus, and she gave him some pheasants to eat. And when he did not want to eat, she begged him on behalf of her lady. Hippolytus spoke to her and joked, but she would not answer him unless it was something to do with her service. Here was the empress not moving from her bed until the following day, when the emperor had already eaten lunch. After she had dressed, she went to the chapel to hear mass, and there was a great dispute amongst the priests as to whether they should read the scriptures, because it was already past noon. Hippolytus remained in the sitting room with this pleasure for a week. When the lady saw that he was quite exhausted, she asked him to leave, telling him to return to her chamber another day after he had rested, and he could take her as he pleased. And from the box where she kept her jewelry, the empress took out a gold chain and put it around his neck, saying, Pray God that I may live, Hippolytus, because I will be surprised if I don't put a crown on your head before many years have passed. Now, for love of me, wear this, since it will be in view that you will remember someone who loves you as much as she does her own life. Hippolytus knelt to the ground, thanked her, and kissed her hand and her mouth, and said, "My lady, how could your majesty deprive yourself of such an exquisite jewel to give it to me? If it were mine, I would give it to your highness, where it would be put to better use. I beg you to keep it." The empress answered, "Hippolytus, never refuse what your lover gives you." "Then, my lady, how will you command my life? What do you want me to do?" "I beg you to leave. I am terribly afraid that tomorrow the emperor may enter this sitting room and find you here. Go now, and let this fear of mine pass. There will be other days when you can return." Let us leave these endearments of hers for Hippolytus now, and return to Trnt to see how his love is doing. When his leg was mended, he often went to the palace without anyone's help. His only obstacle was that the doctors would not let him go as often as he would have liked. The emperor often asked them how many days it would be before he would be entirely well so that he could leave for battle. They told him that he would soon be well enough to ride. When Trnt knew how much the emperor wanted him to go, he felt great anguish because he could not have his desire, or at least some contact with the princess. The passion that the widow carried inside had not been revealed until that time, but when she learned from the emperor that Trnt would be leaving soon, she thought that she might be able to persuade him to take her along to the camp with the excuse that she would serve him there. And if this was impossible, her diabolical plan were to spread a seed throughout the court called discord. She went to the princess and said, "Did you know, my lady, that Trnt told me as we were leaving mass that he wanted to talk to me? I told him that I would be glad to talk to him if I could have your majesty's permission. He thinks he realizes that he will be leaving soon, and he wants to see if he can commit some treachery against your highness. He is thinking to himself, if he can do it, well and good, and if he can't, then he's gone and he'll forget all about you. He told me the other day that that's the way he is, and he laughed as though he had said something wonderful." "Let's do this," said the princess. "You go to talk to him, and we'll see if there is some treachery in his heart. Your advice is good. I should be careful with him." "But, my lady," said the widow, "if I'm to find out what's really in his heart, you must not leave this room until I come back." The widow went out and called a page and told him, "Tell Trnt that the princess is here in this chamber and is very anxious to talk to him." The page went quickly to tell him. When Trnt heard that his lady had asked him to come, he did not wait for anyone to go with him. The widow was watching carefully to see when he would come, and as soon as she saw him, she pretended to be coming out of the princess's chamber at that very moment, and she went up to him and said, "Unfortunately, the empress just took the princess to her chambers, and they are talking right now. I asked her to send for you because just as Jesus Christ enlightened his disciplines, so you spread light to everyone whenever you are in the palace. As soon as you leave, we feel sad. The princess told me to come and keep you company until the empress is gone. So let's sit down until her highness comes. I don't want you to hurt your leg on my account." They sat in the drawing room, and Trnt said, "Calling to mind, my lady, what you just said to me, the consolation you feel when you see me, I thank you very much for saying that. Take this chain as proof of my affection, I beg you, so that when you look at it, you'll think of me, because I want to do a great deal for you." The widow answered, "There's no one who doesn't know how you hurt your leg. Because of their situation, they don't want to offend you or make you angry, and because of the war, they'll hide their feelings and pretend not to know anything. If they were certain there would be peace, Carmenisa would be the first to throw you into everlasting and bitter grief. Are you so blind that you can't see the dishonest things that are plotted and carried out in this palace? It all seems so vile and abominable to me, and I won't agree with any of it. That's why they don't like me. I know for a fact that you're not highly regarded the way you should be. Tell me, wouldn't it be better for you to love a woman who was expert in the art of loving and very honest, even if she weren't a virgin? She would follow you across the sea and over land in war and in peace. She would serve you in your tents both night and day, and would never think of anything but how to please you." "Tell me, my lady," said Trnt, "who is the woman who would perform such remarkable services for me?" "Oh, wretched me," said the widow, "why are you trying to make me suffer more than I already do? Haven't I said enough? Don't pretend what you don't understand so clear. I tried to find a time when we wouldn't be interrupted by anyone to reveal my pain to you. It seems to me that I have made my intention known to you very clearly, and the knight who has graciously offered such a gift can feel very fortunate. Trnt did not hesitate to reply. To satisfy you, I'll answer your kind words. It makes me angry that I can't do what you are asking because your words are filled with so much love. But my free will is captive, and even if I wanted to, my five senses would not allow it.